have one last burning question. Were you ever upset with me for my videos?
Probably.
Did they ever rub you the wrong way? Did you ever watch the Plexus deep dive I did?
Oh, of course I did.
Do you think over your 6 years that you did spend more than you made?
Yes. I felt like I couldn't be me and still be successful.
You were like the picture perfect poster child of like what someone in an MLM should do. You did everything the right way, did you not? Like, you really gave it your all.
I really tried.
And it still didn't work out. And so what does that say? Not about you, but about the business model.
I don't believe anymore. I used to, but I don't believe anymore that how hard you work in an MLM is how successful you'll be.
Hello, and welcome to perhaps one of the most personally significant anti-MLM videos I will ever create. What you're about to see is a really raw conversation between me and my friend of 11 years, also named Hannah, who has spent the last 6 years in the MLM company Plexus. She has been deep into an MLM during the entire time I have been making anti-MLM content, and having a friend in an MLM has really influenced the way that I present the information. I always try to lead with compassion and education, and every time I sit down to make a video, I look into the lens and I imagine myself talking directly to her, which you'll actually get to see me tell her for the very first time in this video. Thankfully, even though our jobs contradicted each other directly for years, we never let that come in between our friendship. I am so grateful for her courage and her vulnerability and her trust in me as we share her story on this platform. This conversation has been years in the making. I hope you enjoy. I want to paint a picture for the listeners, the viewers, however people are watching this, about kind of who you and I are to each other, because I think that that gives some context about like how we even got to this situation. But we're going to get into all your nitty-gritty details about your experience in your MLM. But first, I feel like we need to kind of set the stage. So you and I have been friends for like 12 years at this point. And I was kind of thinking back about when we first met. And I believe it was when I got into high school in 2011, because we were on the dance team together. You were a year ahead of me, and we would do like this big sister, little sister thing on the team.
Mhm.
You remember this? Because I was asking Sam about this. I was like, am I making this up, or did we have big sister, little sister?
We did.
Because,
We
yeah.
did. It's like a sorority kind of.
Yes, and you and I were paired together because we were the Hannahs, and so I
Mhm.
always kind of looked at you as a mentor, someone to look up to, like that big sister role in high school on the dance team. And then after high school, we both kind of went separate ways. We lived in different states, still do. We kind of went on our separate directions, but always still stayed connected somehow, mostly through social media, I would say. But you have a photography business, and you did my high school graduation photos, you did my wedding photos, you did my pregnancy announcement photos. We've still been in each other's lives since high school, which I think is really awesome. And I would still consider us to be really great friends. Although, despite having these very kind of, I guess, like opposing or conflicting opinions on MLMs, what are the odds truly that you would go off and have your job be in an MLM company, and I would go off and have my job be making anti-MLM videos on the internet? Like,
Seriously.
it's just never anything I feel like we ever pictured. And we've never had the opportunity to really sit down and talk about it together. We've had a couple like message exchange, text exchange, but like we've never sat down face to face to talk about, I guess, this big, I don't know, like elephant in the room, I guess.
Yeah.
We both are, have like these very strong opinions on these two different sides. And I feel like now they're kind of merging together. And I think it's cool to be able to talk about that with you now.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I think that now is maybe the time to come clean to you and admit that seeing you be in Plexus was one of the driving factors behind me even like getting an interest in MLM companies or looking into them to begin with, because I don't know if you knew any of this, but just seeing you posting about Plexus on social media and like the products, the lifestyle, the income, the trips, the cars, all of it piqued my interest because I had known you as my friend before. And it was sort of like, what has Hannah gotten into? What is all of this about? Because you seemed really passionate about it and I wanted to know more. And
Yeah.
so Plexus was the first company I ever looked into. That was like the first compensation plan I
Really?
ever, yeah, like that was the first compensation plan I ever tried to decipher. It's so confusing. I still don't really get the compensation plan, if I'm being totally honest. It was the first company that I ever dedicated time to looking into. And it was the first income disclosure statement I'd ever seen. I didn't even know what MLMs were. I didn't even know that it was sort of like an industry and that Plexus was one of the companies that fell under that category. I didn't know that these companies released things like income disclosure statements and you could kind of see what people at different ranks are making and that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
quite frankly, I was just stunned with like the information that I had found. And that was sort of what I guess inspired me to start making videos about it on YouTube, because it was sort of like I had this information and I wanted to share it. I wanted to kind of spread the information I had learned, because to me it was outrageous, to be honest. It didn't make sense what I was seeing, and I wanted to, I guess, like educate on that.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I guess, yeah, like you were kind of one of the driving factors behind me even getting an interest in this. It's
Whoa.
kind of ironic because interested in the opposite way, right? I wasn't interested like let me join, but interested in like let me go make videos about it instead.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Just
I've never told you that, so I think that's kind of
yeah.
interesting.
Well, I remember you had launched it on Instagram, and I remember you being like I watched your first video,
You
and
did?
yeah, and I remember you like acting like you're really nervous and like you're
Yeah.
and that's one thing I love about your channel. You're not talking badly about people. You're talking badly about the situation and this behavior. And I just remember thinking like I wonder if I'm in the back of her head or something
Oh my gosh.
because she looks so nervous to share. I knew that our friendship was important to you, and it obviously is to me. And so I was always curious. So that's funny. That's funny to know.
And that's really interesting that you say exactly that, because I know that I've said this in at least one video and for sure on live streams before, because people are always like, I appreciate your compassionate approach or your like educational approach. Because I think it can be easy to get a little petty or like get a little
Mhm.
snarky and make comments that are about individuals versus the business model, the companies, the behaviors, that kind of thing. And I've
Mhm.
always tried to err more on that side of it with
Yeah.
more like education, compassion. And I know that I've said in previous videos before that it's because I have a friend who is in an MLM. And when I make my videos, I look into the camera and I picture her. And like it kind of makes me emotional when talk
Yeah.
about it like that, because that's really true. I've always done that from the beginning. And so that's interesting that you picked up on that from the very first video, because it did make me nervous. I didn't ever want it to come across as an attack on you or like I disapproved of what you were doing or like I wanted to ruin your business or something by contradicting it publicly or something. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I just never wanted it to come off in that way. And I know that if somebody is in an MLM, they're not necessarily open or willing to hear those things directly to them either, which is why I never really opened up a conversation with you directly, because I don't feel like that would have been productive. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like even though I'm freshly kind of in this new stage of life where I've left that behind, I feel like there were some times where I would watch your videos. I would think like, ouch, like, oh, that kind of stings, but it wasn't anything you were saying about me or the people. It was just you're in this mindset of my company is amazing. My company's one in a million. We're so lucky to have what we have. Everyone else around here is a hater, right? And so
Mhm.
when you're in that mindset, in that behavior, in that community, it's just like anything against that, even if it's informative and not attacking, feels like an attack.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely get what you're saying, because I feel like when you're not open and ready to hear that information, nobody wants to be barraged with information or opinions that they didn't ask for. You know, unsolicited advice or unsolicited opinions aren't really helpful. And so, what I didn't want to do was send you a text and be like, Hannah, I disagree with everything you're doing. I disagree with this, or the business model is bad, or you should get out, or whatever, whatever, because you're not in a state to receive that information. And I felt like it would do more harm than good if I did try to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess in a roundabout way, making videos for other people to consume was sort of my way of putting the information out there and being able to talk about it. And I guess I don't want to say like hoping that you would watch them or anything, because truly I didn't expect you to. I'm actually shocked to hear that you have seen any of them at all, genuinely, because I would imagine that that wouldn't be your cup of tea, right? Like to watch videos that
Yeah, I think
are going against it or something.
totally. I think especially in this last year is when, and I don't even remember when you started.
I was trying to think. I made a couple videos in 2020. I did like the 10 things I hate about MLMs or something. I forget the title of the video, but that was my very first one, the one that you're talking about where I was so nervous because I was. It felt like a very public stance of I don't like MLMs and here's why. And I
Mhm.
knew that everyone in my personal life was going to see it, maybe you included. And there are several other people that I know in MLMs also. And so I just didn't want it to be like this divisive video. Anyway, there was that one. And then I did a Monate deep dive. And then I took a long break for a while because I was like doing my master's and then we moved to Florida. And so
Mhm.
I want to say there was, well, maybe that was 2021. I'll have to go back and look. I don't honestly remember anymore, but I know that I've been at it for like a little over 2 years now. So I guess that would have been 2021 in the fall is like kind of when I started picking up posting regularly. But
Okay.
all of that to say, though, we've never really had a sit down conversation about this together one on one, which is why I think this video is really important. And it's also something that I never was really sure would actually happen, if I'm
Mhm.
being honest. Like we were always just kind of on our own separate paths. I was doing YouTube, you were doing Plexus. And I feel like we both respected that also. I always tried to be really clear to you, like, I love you, I support you. And it was just kind of like an off limits topic, I feel like.
Mhm.
And yeah, I always just took the approach of not really bringing it up. And like I did my thing, you did yours. And at some point down the road, you had kind of reached out. And I want to say your words were like, I'm seeing it now, or I get it now, or
Yeah.
something along those lines where I was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, we can finally have these conversations that I've been dying to have. I specifically remember I was cooking dinner when I got that message from you and I called out to AJ. I was like, AJ, you're never going to believe this. She's giving me some indication, like maybe we can talk about this. And I was so excited, but like still cautious. And so I feel like since then, I've still taken the approach of letting you initiate the conversations because I didn't want to do, I guess, what some MLM reps do when you show interest in their MLM is they open the floodgates and like
Mhm.
word vomit on you all of the things they've been wanting to tell you about how great it is. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to do that to you and be like, oh my gosh, she's having some kind of revelation. Let me spew all of my thoughts on her. Like I didn't want to go that route either. So I think that was probably, I don't know, earlier this year. And then
Yeah.
throughout the months of the year, I feel like the door's gotten a little bit wider and wider and wider open. And you would express some kind of you asked me a question. You were like, do I have some kind of responsibility now to share what I've learned so that other people aren't harmed by it? And I said, it's totally a personal decision, but the platform of this channel is always there for you if you want to talk about it. So here we are, I guess. That's kind of
Yeah.
the origin story of how we got to this place, which I think is really cool.
It is cool. It's
So
funny. It's cool.
it is. It is funny. I was thinking about this last night that it's been like months in the making or almost years in the making for me at least, because I always sort of hoped that this day would come, but never got married to the idea of it fully. Like maybe one day we can talk about Hannah's experience in Plexus because in a way, I have so many questions that I want to ask you. I'm so curious about it, but I didn't want it to come off as like an interrogation or
Mhm.
something. I wanted it
Okay.
to be a conversation that we had together. I didn't want you to feel like threatened by my questions or anything like that. So I think that's why it's
Mhm.
taken so long. But speaking of that, I have so many questions and I want to hear everything about your experience in Plexus because truly I don't know much. I know what I've seen on social media over the years, but I want to hear it from you. I want the dirty details, Hannah. Tell me everything. I'm just so excited. So, I guess we can start at the beginning. I first and foremost want to know how you even got involved with Plexus. What kind of situation were you in when presumably you got pitched this opportunity? And did you do any research on the company beforehand? And did you just kind of jump into it? I want to know how did we get here?
Yeah. Okay. So I was just recently married and I was, in this new stage of life. I remember like I was having kind of a hard time adjusting. Like getting married's an adjustment. You're living with this person, you're making financial decisions. There's a
Mhm.
big thing. But I remember I'd struggled with just my stomach, like feeling okay health wise, physically forever since high school.
Mhm.
And there was this lady. She's like way older than me, but she's like such a cool, hip girl. And so, anyway, I saw that she had been posting about a pink drink or whatever. And I was like, what is this? Like, this girl is cool. She's hip. Like, I want to see what she's doing. So I reached out to her and just was asking what it was.
And what year was this? How long ago are we talking?
So this was April of 2017. So this was
Okay.
6 years ago.
6 years ago. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a
almost.
lot of years.
That is a lot.
We have a lot of ground to cover.
We do. Um,
So you reached out to somebody that you saw kind of pitching maybe a solution to a problem you had, which was like
yes,
gut issues.
gut issues, gut health.
Okay.
And I feel like it's a big part of it is that she was this very bright, bubbly, loud personality that just kind of someone that you look on Instagram and you're just like, wow, I think it'd be cool to like be her friend, And we were acquaintances, we were already friends, but her influence and the fact that it was her was a big factor on why I got involved.
That's a really good point. So she wasn't just like some stranger. She was someone that you had known previously.
Yes, and not super well. She was just an acquaintance. She lived in a different state, but she had been letting me know, like, from the start that this was amazing. I told her a little bit about my issues and kind of got vulnerable. And because I'd been struggling for so long, I think that hearing any kind of hope, anything that opened that door, is just like, yeah, let's do it. And one thing that I really remember about that experience is I didn't fully understand what I was signing up for.
Oh, okay.
Like, I knew I was signing up for products. I was only 20, so I hadn't really had any experience with MLM closely. Like, I hadn't really bought anything. I had probably seen it on social media and just been like, whatever. But I didn't realize that when I was signing up, that I was signing up for an ambassador account.
Did you just think it was like a customer account type thing? Like this is a way to
Yeah.
get a discount on products or something?
Yeah, and I just trusted. She's like, "Oh, this is the way to sign up. This is the best way that you'll save money, so we'll just do this." And it's just like, "Oh, okay, it makes it easy, right?" Like,
Yeah, of course you would want the best deal. So,
yeah. And so I remember it was one of our big first fights in our marriage because she had told me that this pack was 110 or whatever with this sale. But then when we checked out, it went up to like 180.
oh,
And I remember being like, "Oh, I thought it was 110." And she was like, "Oh, well, you have the ambassador fee, which is 35. And then the discount is something that I'll just Venmo you."
interesting.
And so I remember peer pressure, right? You're kind of in the situation where you're on the phone with the person and you're ordering and, you don't
Yeah,
want to be like, "Oh, wait, I don't know,
yeah,
just okay, just do it, like whatever."
yeah.
And it doesn't matter now, but it was one of the big first fights in our marriage because I had told him 110 and then all of a sudden there's this $180 charge on our account and it's just like, what's the deal? What did you sign up for?
Mhm.
So that's how I got involved. And I remember her saying that if we can find 3 people, you have 3 sisters. If we can find 3 people,
Oh,
if we can find 3 people that'll do it with you, your products are paid for.
oh,
And
okay.
so I'm grabbing my sisters. I'm grabbing my sisters and
Really?
throwing them in Facebook messages with this person. And this person and her upline that they didn't know, right? And I'm all hyped up on like, I'm going to be feeling better. You're going to be feeling better. I hadn't even gotten the products yet.
Wow.
It was same day I ordered.
So you're just kind of going on like a hope and a dream of like, these are going to be so life-changing for me. And this person that signed you up, she's now your upline, right?
She was my upline, yeah.
Okay, so just to refer to her as like the upline in the story, I guess. Like, so now she's telling you you can get your products paid for if you just find a few people. And like that sounds sweet to anybody, honestly. And the way she
Mhm.
said you have 3 sisters, even to me hearing that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, your sisters, your 3
My
sisters." And
sisters.
I'm sure that that felt like you got it in the bag. You have 3 sisters. How
I have
easy
3
could that be?
sisters. I have a supportive mom, and she also gave me the option, like, even if they didn't want it, like, you could throw something up on Facebook just saying, like, "This is what you're doing. I could write it for you, what you're excited about, and we can see if there's anyone interested." And I was like, "Oh." And again, this lady's a loud, bright, fun,
Mhm,
bubbly personality where it's like, "Am I cool? Like,
mhm.
am I with you now?" Lots of phrases like, "Let's link arms."
I
And
feel like I see that a lot. "Let's link
yeah,
arms in this business together."
yeah, and I've said it. You want people to be with you. So I remember just being like, "Oh, okay. I'm freshly married. I'm in this new situation. I'm away from family." I'm just like, "Oh, like if I could get my products paid for, sure. This cool girl's doing it. Why couldn't I?"
Mhm. I feel like that's a big mentality that people have when they first join is like you have this representation of what it could be, right? And
Mhm.
then if she can do it, I can do it. How
Mhm.
hard could it be?
Yeah.
So tell me about those early days. So you realize now that you are an ambassador and you're not just a customer, like you signed up for the ambassador program and now you're
Mhm.
being encouraged to reach out to other people to get them involved.
Yeah.
Does that sort of like open up a window of opportunity in your eyes? Like, oh, this could really be something bigger than I thought. And,
Yeah.
like, I guess just tell me about what you were thinking. Were you excited? Were you nervous? Were you unsure? Did you just think that it would be like getting your products paid for, or did you envision it as like maybe even a full time job in the future? What were you thinking at that time?
I remember being very hopeful, very excited. So after I signed up, I had been invited to all these pages and these threads and stuff or
Hmm.
whatever, like newbie, like welcome Hannah. And I remember seeing one of my close friends now, but I remember seeing that she had been posted with all of this success. Paid off blank amount in debt, driving a Lexus, won the yearly trip to Hawaii that year. Like, so I'm just I didn't realize I was an ambassador, but I didn't really realize that there was an ambassador and a customer either. I just thought I was signing up for whatever this was. I didn't realize that there was any kind of difference.
Hmm.
But I was really hopeful. I was really excited. I was like, did I just come across something that is this ground level? Is this something that I felt like hadn't really been in our hometown yet?
I'd never heard of it until you started posting about it.
And
So,
I
like,
hadn't heard of it until that lady posted it a
yeah.
couple So I think maybe that the organization that I had was kind of the first introduction to our hometown,
Hmm.
as far as I knew.
Yeah.
I had seen all the success and my direct upline at the time that signed me up, she was getting posted about how she's doing all these amazing things and she fast started, which means she signed up 20 people in a month. And I'm just like, oh, she just got $1,000. Why I want that. It's
Yeah.
very it's all like social media, I think, was a big factor in me kind of checking it out and being like, oh, what am I involved in now?
Hmm.
It wasn't like, okay, I'm an ambassador now, and this is what it was just kind of
Hmm.
being like, okay, like, here we go.
It seems like you kind of just fell into it. Like, all
Yeah, I
right,
did.
well, we're here. I guess we're gonna
Yeah,
roll with it.
sign up, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think that that absolutely does happen. I feel like maybe you were fed little nuggets of information. Oh, here's these products. And then, oh, here's the ambassador fee. And oh, now you're added to all these group chats. And like it wasn't just you're in it now. It's like little bite-sized pieces leading you
Yeah.
down this path. That's very interesting.
Like,
And
just kind of like a trust me, I'll show
yeah,
you exactly what we're doing.
yeah,
And it's just like,
absolutely.
oh, okay. Like,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
So then kind of I guess in the beginning, I'm thinking like the first few months as the beginning.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you? Did you recruit your sisters? Were you successful at selling the products to people? What did that look like?
Yeah, I ended up getting my mom and my one of my sisters signed up. And then I had posted on Facebook just sharing with people what I signed up for, that I was trying some products, and I had a few people that were interested. And there is quite a few people that were feeling like how I was, how I just wasn't feeling good. And so it felt good to be able to feel like I could provide a solution and also do it as a job. Like that just sounded
Mhm.
great. right?
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't know
great
anyone
point.
who wouldn't want that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure it was also pitched as like something you can really easily fit into your life too.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
totally. I remember I kind of went out the gate really strong. My first month, I went silver, so that's recruiting at least 3 people, and they're signed up as an ambassador and they have a welcome pack, right? And then so that was May 2017. And then I remember the very next month, June 2017, I hit gold, which is the second rank, and it was 20 people in my organization.
20?
20, yeah. 20
That
people in
feels
my
like a lot. That feels like a lot of people.
But it was also like it was my downline, right? So
Mhm.
like let's say I signed someone up and they got 3 people, right? So they're so I didn't sign up all 20. So June 2017 I'd gone gold. And
Mhm.
that felt like I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I can do it, like I'm on fire.
Yeah, because just the first couple of months, you're already like signing up people and hitting new ranks. Did those ranks come with increased income? Like, did you get bonuses for hitting those ranks too? Because I'm sure
Mhm.
that feels good, right?
Yeah, I mean, silver, you get $100 bonus on top of the compensation you get for the packs that they bought. And then gold, it was a $250 bonus on top of the packs that they bought.
So there was an incentive to recruit in that way, right? Because you had these bonuses that you were getting.
Mhm. You definitely were compensated more if you recruited more people and signed people up to get products that way. But there was a way that if someone wanted to, which I wasn't even taught, I wasn't taught, and I also take accountability for the fact that I didn't know that there was like ambassador and customer accounts. Like I didn't do my research, but there was a way that if you just signed up a bunch of customers, that PV would go under your PV and you'd be paid more. So if you had a bunch of customers that ordered $100 each, you'd be paid a certain percentage based on how much.
But in the beginning, you didn't know that you could sign up just customers. You like thought
Yeah.
that if they wanted to try the products, they had to become an ambassador.
Yeah, that's all like I was
Wow.
taught. Like I didn't know. And I think that things kind of get lost in the excitement of it all. I think it's just kind of like, okay, we're doing it. We're signing people up. We're going. I never like sat down or was sat down and said like there's 2 options.
Wow. Okay, so that like my follow-up question, or I guess not a question, but like that kind of signals to me that maybe people are getting involved with these things without fully knowing what it is that they're promoting or how the compensation plan works, maybe. I mean, we kind of already talked about that in the sense that you thought you just were getting the products and then you were sort of roped into becoming an ambassador at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting that now you are an ambassador, but you don't really have like that base knowledge of what the ambassador does or like what the compensation plan is structured like.
Yeah, and all I really knew is just like if you sign 3 people, you get your products paid for and this $100 bonus, which pays for your products. So
Yeah.
I feel like they taught it in those terms rather than okay, every single welcome pack you get this. And those things
Mhm.
I learned over time. Yeah, it wasn't like I sat down and did my homework. And I know that there are people that do that. Like they're like, okay, let's open up the income statement and let's figure out how you get paid and stuff. I was just kind of like, oh, there's money coming in. They
Yeah.
told me I would get $100 and I signed up 3 people, so there it is.
Mhm.
I didn't have the personality where it was like, I'm gonna break this down.
Mhm. And I think that's fair. I think that to an extent it is kind of blinding, like the earning potential to just be like, okay, well, if I have to get 3 people to get this bonus, then I'm just going to focus on that. And like, what more do I need to know, really? Like I can
Yeah.
understand that for sure. It sounds like it became clear pretty early on that recruitment was emphasized, at least,
Mm-hmm.
like more people the merrier kind of thing. Like, is
Oh
that
yeah.
fair to say?
For sure, yeah. I didn't put 2 and 2 together that it was like I'm recruiting all these ambassadors. It was just kind of like, well, we can get your products paid for, so let's do that because that makes it easier, right, on everybody. And that grows my team, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's true, but also in I don't know if I should say selfish way, it's like, oh, my team's growing. This is exciting.
Hmm.
Like we can get your products paid for, but this also really benefits me.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
does.
the driving force behind it,
Hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
I don't feel like there's a lot of people that acknowledge that little thought behind your head that's like, oh my gosh, I'm moving forward. I want to help her. I do. But this also helps me a lot. And I think that, I don't know, that's kind of embarrassing to say.
I understand what you're saying because my interpretation of certain behaviors that I've seen in my videos and like things that I've talked about previously is that I think there's a lot of internal justification that goes on where it's like maybe the person isn't willing to like fully recognize, oh, this is good for me and I'm doing this because it benefits me. That's
Mhm.
like kind of a harsh train of thought to accept,
Yeah.
maybe. And so rather than accepting that for really what it is, right? I'm getting these 3 people on my team so that I can get my products paid for, and then if they continue, then it still benefits me. I think that's like not the attractive way to think. That's sort of like off-putting, so maybe we think over here instead
Mhm.
of I'm helping them and I'm giving them this great opportunity. And they have now the ability to grow their own teams and get their own products paid for. Do you think that that's kind of a fair assessment that maybe we're like disassociating from like, this benefits me and that's why I'm doing it? And rather we're
Mhm.
going for like the, I'm doing this because I'm helping people route?
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely fair to say. I think as I'm thinking about it, it's like kind of embarrassing to say that because I know I'm a good person. I know I have good intentions. And to be so caught up in that world and to just, yeah, disassociate from those thoughts that I was having of like, sweet, this helps me too.
Hmm.
I just don't think that that's talked about enough, and it's something that I'm embarrassed to say because, like, I'm a human. I want what's good for me too, right? But I think that there's a lot of emphasis put on, like, this helps people, this helps people, this helps people, and a lot of the people in their brains are like, this helps me,
Hmm.
and I'm kind of desperate for this.
I think that's really reflective and insightful for you to acknowledge. That's really impressive that you can kind of like, recognize that, I guess. Maybe these daily actions and activities that you're taking in your business are more self-serving, really, but a way we justify it is like, oh, well, I'm helping others, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I think that that is a really real dynamic that probably a lot of people wrestle with. And I think it says a lot about you to be able to recognize that and be like, that was the case for me. And for the record, anybody watching, Hannah is a fantastic person. You are the most like genuine, kind-hearted, gentle-spirited person I know. You're great. And I know that you would never intentionally do anything to hurt anybody ever, basically. And so I say this all the time, but like sometimes being in an MLM makes you do things that you maybe wouldn't otherwise do
Mhm.
in a case like this.
One thing I did want to say is I love the products. I
Mhm.
felt awesome on supplementation. I felt so much better. I don't want people to ever think I was dishonest. I think
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
definitely blew things up. Like I think I what is it called? It says it in shows where it's like the scenes from this are real but have been
Like dramatized,
like, not dramatized, just
like
like do you get what I mean? I think I pulled from every single win I saw and made it this huge thing, which it felt like a huge thing in my life, but it also was to attract people.
mhm.
And I do want people to know that I was never dishonest about how I felt and
Mhm.
that I was feeling great. And I still take the products because I found something that works for me, right? And it's kind of daunting to be like, okay, let's dive into the world of GNC or like Walmart. And one thing I love that you said about your video in your videos is like it's not about the products. Maybe they are great products. It's about the business model, just the kind of community overall.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Does
it
that
does make sense.
okay?
Yeah, it does. Knowing you, I believe that you were being honest and truthful and just wanting to share products that you have found that have worked for you and
Mhm.
to like spread the wealth of that, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think it's good to acknowledge that that can be true, but it can also be true that there was an underlying tone of like you were also selling them to make some money, right?
Absolutely.
That's how the
Mhm.
compensation plan is designed.
Yeah.
More sales the better, more ambassadors the better. So, I
Mhm.
think both of those things can be true. You can be like an honest and true person in your recommendations, but also acknowledging that maybe you overinflated the claims a little bit to like make them more attractive to a variety of different people with different gut health issues that they might be looking to
Mhm.
solve, that kind of thing. So,
I don't
perfect
know
sense to me.
I don't know if overinflated is the word. I'm trying to think of
I'm trying to think too about like what the term is that you're
I was
referring to.
always truthful in how I felt, but I think that I did just like kind of blow it up with certain things. Because yeah, you're selling something, you're wanting to grow your team, right? There's of course part of me that wants people to feel better, but also there's both things are true where it's like you want people to feel better and you're also doing a business that relies on recruiting to be successful.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think both can be true.
They can. Yeah. So I guess on that note, like what would a typical day of work look like for you? Because at this point, it sounds like recruiting is what's emphasized, but you're also believing in these products and wanting to recommend them to people. So walk me through like a typical day or like an example day of like what are some different things you would do to further your business?
Yeah, I would make sure I'd post every day. So I'd post on Facebook
Every single day.
for the most part, yeah.
Wow.
Especially at the beginning, yeah. I did a lot of cold messaging, and I literally want to bury myself under the pillow.
Like, okay, so can we dig into this a little bit? Cold
Totally, yeah.
messaging, complete strangers or people that you sort of knew? How did you find people to message?
The first part, I mean, I had a warm market, right? Like
Mhm.
I was the first one in my hometown, so I went ham on just my friends list.
Mhm.
And I'm in these chats that are saying like, "Hey, these are messages that are working. These are messages that are turning over to sales and to signing up people."
Oh,
And
okay.
so I just like swallow my pride and I just mass message a ton of people. Looking back now, if I ever if I ever want to message someone and I like have a question for someone, I'll go to her message and I'll be like, "Oh," and it'll
Oh.
just be like a cool message and I'm like,
Like, there's the proof, like, 3
yeah, and I
years
just
ago,
totally
4 years ago.
unsend from 4 years
Oh my
ago.
gosh. I
Um,
was trying to think sorry, just a little tangent. I was trying to remember if you ever messaged me, and I don't think you did.
I did, and
You did?
yeah,
Stop
well,
it.
I remember just texting you. I remember
Oh.
saying, "Hey, I'm at the post office right now, and I'm sending out samples. Do you want one?" Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
And I
Yes.
remember and I remember you saying, "I really don't wanna be involved. Like, I love you as a friend, like, I support you in everything you do, but I don't wanna be involved." And I remember just being like, "Okay," and just kinda being like, "Do you want it anyway?" Like, like,
Oh my gosh,
maybe
okay, now that you say that, because in my head, genuinely until this very moment, I didn't connect the 2 that that was a cold message, because
Oh.
I just, like typically in my head, the cold message is, "Hey, hun, I have an opportunity for you," like generic, the cliche, "Hey, hun" message, but you didn't ever pitch me the opportunity. So in my head, I was like, "Oh, she never cold messaged me," but you actually I do remember you saying, "Do you want a sample of the pink drink?"
Mhm.
And I do think I said, "No, thank you," and then you were like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Fine, send it." And you did, and I got it in the mail. I got, like,
Oh.
one sample of it, and I tried it, and it tasted fine, but I also remember thinking, "I don't know if I can tell any effects based on 1
Oh,
sample."
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just kinda, like, left it at that, like, yeah, it was fine, like, I didn't hate it, but
Mhm.
I also didn't really notice anything because I didn't take it for any extended period of time,
Uh-huh.
so
Yeah.
that's very interesting because I remember that, but if you would've asked me a minute ago if you ever cold messaged me, I would've said no, but
I would consider that a cold message because
I
it's
would too
like
now that I'm, like, putting the pieces
yeah.
together, yeah.
'Cause it's like messaging someone that didn't come to you first
Yep,
and that is saying like, "Hey, do you want a sample?"
absolutely. Yeah, that is a cold message, so
Mhm.
wow, okay. Sorry to get us off on a tangent, but okay, so you would cold message people as part of your daily
Yeah,
tasks,
mhm.
so posting, cold messaging, what else?
I remember I signed up right before the big convention. So conventions are usually in June. And I signed up end of April. So I remember just kind of in the beginning of my journey, I went silver in May. And then in June, when I was pushing for gold, which is 20 people, everyone was at this big convention. And so I'm kind of watching all the threads. I had just been added to a bunch of things. I had just been added by a bunch of new friends. Like I had this new community. I remember that a lot of the leaders had put together this like convention bingo or something. So it gave you or a bingo card and it was like bingo square was a task. What I considered my work for the day was like doing a bingo, doing a certain number of these tasks. And a lot of them were like cold message this, sign up a new ambassador, go live on your Facebook, create a new like Facebook event and invite people to it. So I think a lot of the work I did was based off of that at first. And that kind of taught me how to work, like
Interesting.
what I was to do to be successful.
Yeah. And
So,
you saying the bingo card, I've actually seen a bingo card before. It wasn't from Plexus. I want to say it was for like, I don't even remember what company it was for, but I talked about it in a top fails video once. And I went through and I highlighted all of the tasks that were money producing tasks. Like you
mhm,
sign up an ambassador, you sell a product. And then there were all the other tasks that you highlight that are non-income producing, like
mhm,
posting on social media or attending a Zoom call or cold messaging or whatever. And it was really interesting to see on that particular bingo card. I haven't seen this Plexus one you're talking about, but it was like two of the bingo squares were income producing activities and all the rest were not. And I think that's
mhm,
really interesting because it makes sense to me that you would look at all of those tasks and see them as furthering yourself in the business, right? Cold messaging people could lead to these other things that are going to make you money. So they're worth spending time on in that regard,
mhm.
right? Or like making a post on social media. But do you ever think about how much time you spent on those kinds of things that you didn't get paid for directly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you were saying that in my head, it was like, well, those are and that's just like 6 years, man. But
Yeah.
those were the seeds that you planted or whatever. So
Yes.
eventually later on, those would lead to actual income producing. It would produce income. But these IPA tasks, these income producing activities, they would eventually lead to it, maybe with certain people. But a lot of it was just like the busy stuff to kind of just plant seeds and kind of get yourself out there.
That's a good way to put it, planting seeds for sure, because you're hoping that there will be a return on that investment of your time
Mhm.
later in the
Yeah.
form of like someone signing up or buying something, right?
Mhm. And I would say that that did happen. There were definitely seasons in my experience where it would be really slow or really, really hard and fast. I would say that people did watch my journey over years and would later come back and say, okay, I'm interested and I want to try it. So I
That's
think that,
interesting.
but it wasn't ever guaranteed that that would be the case,
Yeah.
right?
And it's just kind of like putting a hope and a prayer out there. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe someday I'll make some money on this. I see it as kind of like donating your time right now to hopefully see something on it in the future.
Hmm.
Is it fair to say that your daily activities were most of that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Posting, cold messaging,
Uh-huh.
and these non-income producing activities for the time being? Like that's what you would mostly do?
Yeah, I've been a photographer for over 10 years now. So I'm used to being home. I'm used to kind of doing my own thing. So that was very enticing to me to be able to continue doing that, but also kind of control what I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, just being home, messaging, posting, helping anyone on my team who needed help, answering questions, kind of
Fitting it into the pockets of time in your
yeah,
day.
yeah. Yeah. Um, what else? Oh, learning the back office, I would say. Just a whole lot of all of that over
That's what I always kind of envisioned people in an MLM doing. Like that's what I feel like I see on social media the most is the planting of the seeds, as you said. So
yes. Mhm.
another thing I want to know is roughly how many hours a week do you think you would put in? How much do you think you were working? Was it part-time, full-time, overtime on these kinds of tasks?
It varied. Beginning, I would definitely say full time, and when these months that I hit big ranks, definitely full time or overtime. If I wasn't really feeling it and I was just kind of like, well, kind of slow and getting through each month, I would say just like an hour or two a day, maybe.
Mhm.
Most of the time, it wasn't just organized time where I sat at a desk and I'm doing it. It's just kind of throughout the day, just someone messages me, I'm answering back. It's just a lot of seasons. Like it just totally depended on what was going on.
Do you ever feel like you had periods of time of high inspiration and then periods of time of low inspiration? Or I guess another way to say it is like motivation or your drive to work the business, I guess.
I think definitely at the beginning, and then after any big events, those were very high motivated, just like very focused, blinders on, working in between events. And depending on how many people decided not to order anymore, that had a huge effect on how I felt.
Oh,
How
yeah.
I felt about just my business in general, but also ultimately later I realized myself. So it just totally depended on what was happening in Plexus at that time. If there had been an event, the team that I joined was very good in the beginning about getting together. And there's a large group here in Utah where I am. And so there wasn't very much time in between events for me. And I got to have a lot of really cool experiences because of the team I was on. Plexus puts on 2 or 3 big events a year, but this team that I was part of kind of skyrocketed pretty fast. And so we were going to Hawaii and they were paying for the Airbnb or whatever. And we were going to cabins in the canyons or in the mountains in California. Like we were just like, I got to go to a lot of cool places because of the opportunity I had to be on that team, or
Mhm.
because of the team I joined.
Depending on what team you join or what the leadership or higher ups on that team are like, that can totally change the dynamic of your own experience in
Huge.
the business,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I kind of want to know more about those trips. You say
Mhm.
that there were these Plexus held trips, conventions, things like that, but then there were also these like travel incentive type trips that you went on too.
So there were like corporate events. So the Plexus company, it depends on what the event was, but there was like convention where anybody could go. You buy a registration ticket, you buy your whole way.
Hmm.
And then there were other corporate trips that you could earn. So it was like Leaders Retreat just happened just last week or whatever for them. It was a cruise. So they pay for your spot on the boat, but you pay for your airfare and your food and any souvenirs or whatever. When you get into those higher ranks, they have these it's called an emerald trip, emerald extravaganza, and they pay your whole way to Hawaii or Mexico with the company. They pay for your hotel, they pay for your airfare, they pay for a car. So all of those were going on. And then I was part of a team that was booking Airbnbs so that we could get together and kind of do like a hurrah, like a get together and get inspired. Or you could do these tasks and earn a trip to Hawaii, and they pay for food and lodging, but you pay for your airfare, and it gives you the opportunity to be in the room, right? And
Mm,
it's a very motivating thing because you want to be in that top group. Like you want to be someone that's considered successful.
yeah.
I got to go on lots of little things like that. But
Hmm. I'm mostly interested in the cost of these things because as someone who's an outsider seeing people in MLMs posting about these things on social media, they always refer to it as a free trip.
mhm.
So, like, what is your insight on that? Because what I heard you say is like there's convention where you pay your whole way, and then there's these trips where like some things are paid for, and then there's these trips where more things are paid for. But
Mhm.
at any point, did you go on a trip that was 100% paid for? You
Yeah.
didn't pay for airfare, you didn't pay for hotel, you didn't pay for food, you didn't pay for your Uber to and from the hotel or whatever?
And no, sorry, no, I didn't.
There wasn't one time where everything was covered.
Everything? No,
Everything.
no.
What was the most that was covered? So, like, hotel, airfare, food.
It was the Mexico or the Emerald Extravaganza once you get into those higher
Okay.
ranks. So they pay for airfare, travel to and from the hotel. You paid your own souvenirs. It depended. You got like a breakfast credit at a place at the hotel. So if you wanted to go over that, then you
Mhm.
were responsible for that. Any souvenirs. So breakfast was covered, but lunch and dinner were not.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that's pretty significant. I feel like that's a lot of the cost that was covered, but that was the Emerald trip. You had to achieve a certain level to be
Mhm.
able to have that kind of trip, right?
Uh huh. Yeah.
So there were other people in the company at lower ranks who were going on some trips, but they weren't like that fully inclusive
No.
cost-wise. Interesting. And then I don't know if you know this off the top of your head or whatever, but so that's an incentive trip, that Emerald trip.
Mm-hmm.
What I would assume, having not seen any of Plexus's reporting or anything, but I would assume that they reported that on your taxes as some kind of incentive value. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong or if you know differently, but typically if the company is going to give you some kind of gift or reward or whatever, they're going to say on your taxes that you got X value worth of incentives, and then you'd have to pay back taxes on that. Do you know if you had to do that at all?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that like that is sometimes a sneaky thing that I have seen with other
Mm.
companies. So even theoretically, if a company were to offer somebody a completely free paid for trip, they would still put it on their taxes and say like, well, this trip was worth $2,000 and now you have to pay taxes on the value of it kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
I think that's interesting. That's something that I didn't know for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
Like I had learned that pretty recently. And so I feel like it's just so sneaky. Like it's one of those sneaky little ways that, you can feel like it's a free trip and you can claim that it's a free trip, but in the end, is it really?
Mhm.
So it's
And
something that I like to think about. I don't know, like I haven't seen your taxes obviously, but like it's just something that I like to bring up whenever there's an opportunity because it's one of those things that can slip through the cracks and it's like, oh yeah, I don't really know if I did pay taxes on that. Maybe not.
I should probably look at that.
That might be interesting because in
I
the end, you would have had to pay for that trip in some capacity, right? If they did
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah, but there wasn't ever an all-out free trip.
mhm.
Well, there's a certain amount of pressure, and not from anyone in particular in my situation, but there's a certain amount of pressure from the people you're with that also are sharing the opportunity or with the company, but also from the company to make sure you're in the room. So,
Mm,
like convention, you're paying for hotel, you're paying for airfare,
yeah.
you're paying for food, you're paying for everything. It's a 4 or 5 day trip, but it's like, oh, it'll pay off later when I get to these higher ranks or whatever.
Mm,
And that was kind of my mindset. But I remember being like, this sucks to pay for. I mean, my room was $900,
oh
like
my gosh. Yeah.
just, and it wasn't anything extravagant.
Yeah, but still staying in a hotel for multiple days, like it's not
Yeah.
really cheap. But
Yeah.
but it sounds like there was kind of an expectation on you that you should be there. Like if you care about your business and you want to further yourself, you need to come in here.
Be in the room.
You need to
If
see
you're
what it's all about.
if you're serious, you'll show up, basically.
And I
And
have seen that. Specifically, I'm thinking of somebody in Monate, actually. Every year she does this rant after their Monations convention about like people who are so sad that they couldn't come, but if you wanted to be there, you would. And therefore, it's all your fault. And, like just very much like turning it around on her downline. People would message her on Instagram replying to her stories, "Oh, I'm so jealous. I wish I could be there." And she would screenshot that and be like, "Well, if you wanted to, you would." And I've always thought like, okay, but it's a lot of money. I
yeah.
don't have a whole bunch of money laying around to go to, buy a flight to Atlanta or whatever and stay in the
Mhm.
city for 5 days and pay for all my food and the tickets to the convention,
Mhm.
especially if this isn't your full-time job and you have an actual like 9 to 5 to report to or something, then you're taking time off of that job to go do this.
Mhm.
And I just wonder how many people, industry wide, is it really feasible for them to be going to these conventions? And how many people in the end really do lose money
Yeah.
by attending, even though it is really pressured on them to be there and they're sort of made to feel like if you are there, it's gonna pay off, right?
Mhm.
Like it's an investment. I wonder how many people have that mindset. It's an investment to be
Yeah,
spending this money.
and I even remember years in thinking this about people that didn't come to the conventions or to the events. I had this thought, I'm a nice, caring, genuine person, and still I'm thinking, well, if they actually cared, they would go.
They would make it happen. They would find a way. If
Yeah,
there's a will, there's a way.
and there's tons of stories of people sharing on calls and stuff like saying, I didn't have any money to go, but like I put on my credit card and I went. And I'm so grateful
Whoa.
I did. And all this stuff, looking back, it's just like, what a horrible financial decision. You
Right.
know, like
Right.
go do something you can't afford because of basically the peer pressure
That's a
is
great way to put it. And
is
then being
sad.
kind of being like, I don't know if praised is the right word, but just being recognized for like, oh, look at the sacrifices so and so made to
Mhm.
be there. And if she could do it, then you should have been able
Why
to
couldn't
as
you?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those people, I'm sure, were like made examples out of what you should be doing if you really cared or if you wanted to work hard enough or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I think about that a lot too.
And I feel like a lot of that judgment is coming down. I always heard this quote. It was like, it's only the people below you that judge you. It's never the people above you that are passing
Mm.
down judgment. I remember hearing that quote, but I was just kind of like, what? Like I felt like that wasn't the case, and I'm not pointing any people out. I'm not naming anyone, but it's just like I feel like there was a lot of if you cared, you would. So,
Hmm.
and I feel like
And
that is judgment.
I think it's judgment, and I also think it's blame that you can place on someone for like, well, if you aren't seeing the kinds of results in your business that you want, then maybe you should have been there, or maybe you should have worked harder, or maybe. Like it takes all different forms. But I think that not attending the convention is one of the ways you can blame a person for not having the results they were expecting, maybe.
Mhm.
That's my interpretation at least.
It's easy for someone with a ton of resources in one of these higher ranks to be like, just figure it out.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people have that opportunity or those resources. I don't believe anymore. I used to, but I don't believe anymore that how hard you work in an MLM is how successful you'll be.
I think that is like such a big realization too, because it's true. I'm of the belief, because I've seen it happen time and time again, that it's not correlated. Hard work is not correlated to your outcomes, really, because you
Mhm.
can cold message all day long. You can attend every Zoom call and every convention. You can post every single day on social media, but at the end of the day, it's not up to you. You know,
Yeah.
maybe your results meaning like how many sales you can make or how many people you can recruit, that's not in your control. You can do your best to control it. You can do your best to make as many opportunities for yourself as possible, but at the end of the day, it's up to other people to take
Mhm.
you up on it.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. And you can't control other people.
And
So
how stressful for your
yeah.
paycheck to be reliant upon other people's decisions. That is something I cannot get over. I feel like sick about it. If, you know, being in that kind of position of like my paycheck is reliant upon other people. So did you ever feel that kind of stress and that pressure of like, let's talk about it this way. Let's frame it like it's the end of the month. What is going through Hannah's mind at the end of the month? I'm dying to know, because the end of the month would roll around and I would worry for you, Hannah. I would be like, oh no, it's the end of the month. I could almost like feel that kind of stress, because I feel like I've seen a lot of examples of that madness that goes on, and
Yeah.
I would worry about you. I would be like, I wonder what Hannah's doing in these final days of the month, because for anybody who doesn't know, and maybe you can touch on this, things reset at the start of every month, and the calendar month is sort of your time frame to hit goals, right?
Mhm.
And then you reset on the first. So, what was that like for you?
Very daunting. I would just dread the end of the month, and I started to just be so upset. The MLM I was with, you got points for each order that went through, and I had kind of had it set up. I was very on top of these are the amount of points I needed by this day, and like I need to hit this amount of points today to be on track to be able to
Mm,
whatever. And so if I wasn't, then I would just be gearing up for a horrible, hard end of month if I wanted to hold something or hit a rank or
I have a
hours.
question really quick. So you just said hold something or hit a rank. So every single month you had to earn your keep at a certain rank. If you didn't hit or maintain certain levels, then you would drop down in ranks.
Pay wise, yes. So let's say I hit gold or whatever that I had talked about. I hit gold. If I don't hit that 20 person ordering minimum that month, I'm still a gold ambassador, but I'm paid as a silver ambassador.
So you get the title, but not the paycheck.
So you get the title, you're a gold ambassador, you always will be.
Okay.
But if I had less than 20 people order, then you were paid as a silver. So in the back office, it shows this person is a gold ambassador paid as.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense because I've seen that term paid as before.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your career high rank?
Emerald.
Emerald. So you are always an emerald. You're never like, you don't drop
Mm-hmm.
down. You get that
Right.
title that's yours to keep, but you might be paid as something lower than that.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So once you hit emerald, it's like, oh, like she's an emerald forever. When you
Mm-hmm.
go to convention, you get the green lanyard, you get the special breakfast, whatever. But I could have been paid as something completely different, but I was still an emerald.
That is actually very intriguing to me. And I feel like we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important one because you get the green lanyard. To everyone else, you're an emerald. And they can go and look at that income disclosure and see emeralds are making about this ballpark in income, but that's not necessarily a representation of what your finances actually look like.
Mm-hmm.
Like the outward presentation is I am this status, but if you really know what's going on behind the scenes, it doesn't match up.
Yeah, for sure.
You're kind of blowing my mind with that a little bit because I always knew that to some degree there is like a level of I don't want to say like performance, but it kind of like you always put your best foot forward on social media just
Yeah.
generally, like you
Uh-huh.
always want to make your achievements seem really grand and you want other people to be inspired by them and to strive for them too. And
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense for an MLM when a lot of the income is dependent on other people joining, right? So they want to see what's
Uh-huh.
possible. But it almost feels like at some point it's a lie. Is that, I don't
Hmm.
mean to be harsh by that, but like if
Like,
I'm an emerald and I'm perceived to be at this really high level, because that's, or correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like the third highest in the company. There's two ranks
yeah.
above that, sapphire, diamond.
Yeah.
So that's pretty high up there. And that's like a status symbol in the company. You're an emerald.
Yeah.
But like we already kind of said, like that's what other people perceive you as, but that might not be what you're being paid as, which at the end of the day, the paycheck is kind of the most important part of this whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
in my opinion, who cares if you're an emerald if you're being paid as a gold, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's totally right.
That is really shocking. Yeah. I think where I was going with that is there's a certain level of the image you want to portray, but it might not always be accurate.
Yeah. Like I said before, it was never intentional, but it
Yeah.
also I think both things can be true where I was an emerald and I hit this certain rank. Me putting out there that I was an emerald wasn't me trying to be deceitful. It wasn't me trying to be dishonest by saying I was an emerald even if I wasn't getting paid
Mhm.
as.
So sorry for getting us off on a tangent, but we were talking about what the end of the month looks like for you. So you're kind of having this pressure on you to achieve these certain goals
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the month, and you have a timeline that you're up against.
So at the end of the month at midnight, or it was 10 p.m. Utah time because it's midnight Eastern, the points reset for the next month. And if you weren't at what you were hoping for point wise, the last few days of the month were pretty hellish. It was a lot of internal pressure, seeing other people hitting their goals or hitting new ranks within the company. You have a lot of internal pressure to perform well, like these people are supposedly. And if you don't, I personally felt, I don't know, you just felt horrible. Like, I'm not good enough to continue holding this rank, basically. And it was just so internalized. When you step back and look at the facts, it's like, okay, these points are at blank. And that was actually a great thing that some of my uplines were like, points are points. It's really okay. But then there is also this internal pressure and reading into things that people are saying to be like, if you don't hit this rank or you don't hit this point goal or whatever, then it just felt like daunting. It felt like it was the end of your career. And I think there were points of external pressure, people around you, leaders, whether it was intentional or not, you had those thoughts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because I imagine it's just like really stressful feeling like you're up against some kind of deadline. And like if you've put in all this work to rack up these points and stuff and you don't hit the milestone, then it's like they reset at the beginning of the next month and it's you have to like start from ground zero all over again kind of thing.
Mhm.
So
And it almost got to a point of desperation, I think,
I think
for
that's a
me.
good word for it. Yeah.
I'm working the last day of the month. I remember Sam would ask me, my husband would ask me something, and I'm just like, sorry, babe, like it's the 31st. No can do. You know, I'm glued to my computer. And it got to a point of desperation where it's like, does anyone want these products? Like, you know, like,
Hello, anyone out there, please.
seriously. And looking back, it's just like cringe level 1,000 on myself. It just felt like desperation. It felt like forcing something that wasn't there points wise, orders wise. And while I probably justified it as like being proactive and looking into every lead possible, I think it was just kind of out of control.
Mhm.
That's like hard to admit, and that's hard to like think about because it was just so hard. I remember I was had a Halloween party with some friends and I'm on my computer.
So not living in the present moment and enjoying that party, but your mind is elsewhere because it's the 31st or,
I was on my computer.
wow.
Everyone's watching a movie together and I'm over in the corner on my computer. And that makes me really sad
I
looking back.
can see why, yeah. Because I mean, I'm sure it's hard to think about it like this, but you can't get that time back. You
Mhm.
can't go back and relive that party a different way.
Yeah.
It was, I guess, wasted on the business opportunity. So that
Yeah.
does make me really sad because there's so much going on around us in the present moment, but it is hard to stay attentive to that when in the back of your mind you have these goals and these deadlines and the clock is ticking and the internal pressures and the external pressures placed on you. It kind of makes you feel like you have to be forced into working during that time. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a bummer. It is.
That is a bummer.
I do want to ask, so these points, they
Mhm.
were collected. Let me just cut to the chase. Did you ever place orders to fulfill certain goals at the end of the month? Is that a way that the Plexus compensation plan allows you to work? Because in some companies, it's called like bonus buying, rank buying, and it is against the policy, but people do it all the time where they're like one order away from fulfilling their points or whatever. And so they just
Uh,
place the order themselves to get it. Did that ever happen to you if you're willing to share?
Yes. Yeah. So if I was ever low in points, I had people that had stopped ordering that would allow me to buy on their account.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you would be paying for the orders, but it would show up as like
Under
it
their
was
name.
their order. So it couldn't be really traced to you. Wow.
Mhm. Yeah. So if I was low and I would justify needing product, I had certain people on my team that I felt comfortable enough or close enough with that I would just be like, "Hey, I'm in need of some product. Is it okay if I order on your account?"
Wow, Hannah. That's big. Like
Yeah.
and I'm so proud of you for like talking about that because I don't think a lot of people would and it offers really valuable insight into what's going on at the end of the month and that level of
Mhm.
desperation that you talked about.
Mhm.
There's so much pressure and it makes you do things that maybe you don't feel are like the right thing to be doing, but you do them anyway because it's justified in the sense of like, well, I need the product anyway. And if it's going to help me
Mhm.
hit my goals, then why not kind of
Why not?
thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways that we can justify those actions in the moment when you look back on them and you're like, maybe that was a little sketch. But I mean, props to you for like talking about that because that's important to talk about. And it goes on all the time, but people don't want to admit it. And so I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's something I feel like I kind of just shut off when thinking about my experience because I justified buying a lot of product to hold
Mhm.
a to have a name.
Wow. That's like really, that's deep.
It's bummer,
Mhm.
but it's true.
And I think that's fair to recognize that it sucks, but that's what happened. And at the end of the day, something that I always want to point out is that that's something that we need to be blaming the compensation plan for, in my opinion. That's not the way that it should be designed. We shouldn't have ambassadors feeling like they need to go on other people's accounts and place orders to fulfill certain goals in order to maintain a certain status. It's a whole dynamic that the compensation plan creates and that like the industry of MLMs creates. And so I think that that's important to point out that being in an MLM makes you do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. And I don't think that that is really a reflection of you and your character. I think that it's a reflection of the compensation plan. Personally, I think that if it wasn't structured that way, then people wouldn't be doing that. But it is structured that way in a way that's kind of
Mhm.
set up for people to feel stressed and pressured and do things they wouldn't otherwise do.
Yeah. It's filling up a bucket with holes in it.
Yeah, I think I've made that analogy before.
Have
It's like
you?
I think I have because yeah, it's like you're doing all this you can trying to fill the bucket, but faster than it's emptying. It's just
Mhm.
constantly emptying out from the bottom and you've got to keep putting in more than is coming out. And at some point, I feel like that burns you out.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like the higher up you get, the fuller your bucket is. So it's like you have to get to a certain point for it to be manageable. If you're just dumping a bunch of water in, but it's immediately just running out, then it's impossible. But if all of a sudden you have this big surge of success and your bucket's a little bit fuller, you can manage it better. But a
Mhm.
lot of people don't get to that point.
Mhm.
And thinking now about people who are still in the business and how their buckets are completely full to the top and they have little holes in the bottom, but there are still people that are desperately trying to fill up the bucket in a plan that was, I think this is from you, that was made for them to fail. Basically, like,
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can be successful in an MLM anymore.
What makes you say that? Like, what about the industry is so unsustainable that people just can't find success? Because you're talking about this bucket analogy, and I'm interpreting it as like the people at the top have pretty easy to manage buckets, and people at the bottom are like scrambling.
People who are just starting and don't necessarily have the influence to all of a sudden just fill it up really fast. It's impossible. I feel since stopping sharing, since kind of stepping away, I think that there are some people who can get in, have really big influence, like influencers, like people with huge following. I think that it is possible for them to get in and shoot to the top really fast. I don't think that there is a way to be successful over time unless you shoot up really fast.
I agree with that 100%.
Because, I mean, 6 years, I worked really hard.
You did.
There were times where I would shoot up a little bit, but yeah, I don't think it's possible anymore.
I agree because I think that this analogy of filling the bucket really fast is referring to how big you can grow your team.
Mhm.
And I think that especially now in 2023 with the awareness, I guess, around MLM companies and
Mhm.
I guess to an extent, like anti-MLM content is out there. I just feel like in general, people are kind of associating more of this negative
Yeah.
impression of MLMs and how they're not sustainable and how you do have to recruit if you want to shoot up to the top really fast and build something that's maintainable.
Mhm.
And I agree that I just don't think it's really desirable or maintainable or realistic for people to expect that they can join an MLM today in 2023 and find enough people out there who are willing to build them to the top.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, maybe if it's a brand new company that people aren't aware of yet, that's probably
Mhm.
somebody's best shot at finding themselves at the top. But I do agree that you're working against the current for sure. By
Mhm.
joining an MLM today, I think it would be really difficult to find a lot of people to build that team. And
Yeah.
just mathematically, too, if you recruit your friends who recruit theirs and theirs and theirs, it can only continue for so many cycles before you've just completely oversaturated
Mhm.
everybody. So
Yeah.
that's a huge piece of it too.
Mhm.
As far as hitting ranks and
Mhm.
stuff, can you walk me through like a brief timeline of your rise to Emerald Did you stay at Emerald for any amount of time? Did you dip below that? I kind of want to know what that was like for you over the span of 6 years.
Yeah, so I hit silver in May 2017, gold, which is 20 people ordering at least 100 PV in June. So that was back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And then in February of 2018, I hit senior gold. So that is the next rank. It's 50 people ordering at least like $100 worth of product.
Okay.
Um,
Each person has to be ordering that much?
yes, it's called a welcome pack.
Mm-hmm.
If they order a welcome pack, then that counts towards that. So 50 separate welcome packs.
Wow.
And then in May 2018, I hit ruby, which is a gem rank. That's like a rank you hit when people see you as serious. Like
Okay,
people
so it's
see
like a
you as like,
status symbol.
yeah. When you hit ruby, that's 100 people ordering, or 100 people in 1 month ordered at least $100 worth each.
Wow. So this is just like on a monthly basis. This isn't total. This is just within the calendar month, 100 people bought $100 worth of stuff.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff and a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah, it
So,
is.
so when you're saying like I hit Ruby, that's because you hit those goals, and then the next month to be paid as Ruby, you have to do it all again.
Yes. So if I wanted to hold ruby, you'd have to have it's either it's 100 people ordering or it's 500 points. Yeah. So you get 5 points per person.
Even you just saying that, I'm like, how is that maintainable?
It was really hard, but it's like it's this weird balance because as time went on, you're building up a core group of people that love the products and are ordering every month, but then there's also the people that fall off. And
Uh-huh.
so the bigger you build your core group of people, the higher you're getting and the easier it is to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
So May 2018, I hit ruby, and then in January of 2019, I hit senior ruby. So that's 150 people
Mm-hmm.
um, ordering 100 PV or $100 in one calendar month. Um,
Okay. Keep us going.
and then, and then so it was January 2019, and then I hit emerald in July of 2020.
Okay. So what I'm noticing is the stretch between ranks is getting longer and longer and longer. Is
Yeah.
that correct? Did I hear that right? So it's like
Mhm.
a month between the first two, and then a few months, and then a
Mhm.
few months more, and then like almost a year.
Yeah,
Wow.
over a year, yeah.
Because all that time is spent, like you said, building that core group of people who are going to consistently buy month after month. And that takes
Uh-huh.
time to find those people. So
Yeah.
therefore, it takes time to hit the ranks.
But it also is a factor of, like, getting new people in that are building the business, and so if you have someone that's super influential, that's adding a ton of people, that fills in a ton of cracks or holes that were left by people who stopped ordering or someone that stopped sharing the business or
Mhm.
yeah, it just takes time to get that, like, core group of people where it's steadily hitting that mark. So by the time I went senior ruby, I was steadily hitting 600 points or whatever. Senior ruby is 750. So I was
Mhm.
easily getting ruby, but pushing to that extra 100 points was or 150 points was hard.
Mhm. So you hit emerald. Was that maintainable for you for any amount of time? Did you hit it 1 month and go back down to paid as something
Yeah.
lower?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I hit it in July 2020. So Emerald is 300 people in one calendar month buying at least 100 PV.
That is so many people, Hannah. That is
That's
so many people.
300. So the next month I dropped 100 orders. So I was
Just by
at,
people naturally being like, "I'm
yeah,
not
and me
gonna buy
not
anything
pushing
this
as hard.
month. I'm done." Like, wow. And that's another instance of something you can't control. You can only control certain aspects of it, and people
Yeah.
dropping off is not something you can do.
Well, and I burnt myself out in July. So I was like, okay, in August, I'm, like, I can't, like,
Mhm.
emotionally, I can't push as hard as I did.
Mhm.
And it scared me to think that if I wanted to maintain that, that I would have to work like I did. And that
Yeah.
was, I mean, I was probably working 12 hours a day.
Oh my gosh. Where did this quote come from? It's hard to make it to the top, but it's harder to stay there. I don't know where that came from, but that's what I'm thinking of right now. Like you burn yourself out so hard getting to that point, but what's even harder is maintaining that level of performance. Now, you've hit this bar for yourself, but how long can you go before it's just impossible to keep it up?
Yeah.
Oh, I just feel like I
Um,
need to take a deep breath after that.
yeah, it was stressful. It was stressful. So I didn't hit emerald again. I burnt myself out for the rest of the year, basically.
Mhm.
It was just like, I don't even care,
Mhm.
honestly. So when you first hit emerald, or when you hit emerald your first time, if you just hit it, then you earn that emerald extravaganza trip that year.
Okay.
But the next year, you have to hold it at least 5 months to be able to qualify for that trip.
Mm.
So it's from July to July. So come March, I'm like, I have to be on that trip again. Because how embarrassing would it be if I was an emerald that didn't go on the Emerald Extravaganza trip?
Mhm.
So,
Wow. So another instance of maybe the external pressure, like the status that you've now
mhm,
reached and have to like keep it up. But
yeah.
the bar is set so much higher. It's 5 times higher. You have to hit it 5 months instead of just one, right? I heard that correctly?
Yes. Uh-huh. So you hit it, you
Oh
get like kind
my
of a,
gosh.
you hit it once, you get to go that year, but you have to hold it for 5 months at least to go any year after. So come March, I was like, I have to figure this out. So I pushed March, April, May, and I just killed myself for 3 months trying to hold. And I did. I held it for those 3 months. And in June, I was not on track at all. And I just like kind of threw my hands up and I was like, I can't.
Mhm.
I cannot emotionally do this. I was like, what's the point of even going if I'm forcing it
Mhm.
and earning it? And it's funny because a lot of people couldn't go. It was in Mexico that year instead of Hawaii. And so a lot of people couldn't go and get their passports in time because of COVID. And so they allowed
Mm.
me to go. They gave me a pity trip.
So even though you didn't hit the requirements, you still got to go?
Yes, because I was an emerald that held it at least 2 months, I think.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah,
didn't realize that they would, like, make exceptions, like, "Oh, not as many people can go as we thought, so we're gonna lower the bar a
it was
little
a
bit."
weird, and at that point,
Wow.
I was just like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, like, I'm going. Obviously, it's a trip," but I was also like, I didn't really earn it, like, here I am. I don't know. It was just kind of it was a lot of weird emotions with it. I
Uh-huh.
was really excited to go, but I had already gone through all of the emotions of not earning it and being okay with that. And then they announced, like, hey, not as many people are able to get their passports because of COVID. You're welcome to come if you want to come. Kind of got a pity invite.
My gosh. So you go I feel like I remember so that trip would have been in, like, 2021? Is that the
Yes.
right timeline? I feel like
Mhm.
I remember your posts about that and stuff. I
Mhm.
don't remember any of the verbiage or, like, your captions or whatever, but I remember seeing, "Oh, she earned another trip."
Mhm.
So, it's another example for me as, like, an outsider of I'm seeing Hannah in Plexus achieving these great ranks and
Mhm.
going on these trips and things, but you would never post, "Oh, I got a pity invite." And I didn't actually hit the requirements, but I still got to go kind of thing. And that's not any fault of your own. I'm just saying, like, it's another industry-wide situation that I see a lot of people, I guess, flaunting these achievements that they've gotten when there's a lot more going on underneath the surface. Like we just talked about with the paid as thing, you know?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that I feel like that's just another example of that as well, which kind of brings me to the Lexus.
The Lexus.
Can we get into this a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Here.
So Emerald is the rank in the compensation plan where you are now eligible for the Plexus Lexus program. And
Correct.
my understanding of the program, and you can feel free to correct me, is that you hit this rank and now you're eligible to take yourself to the dealership,
Mhm.
get your car. They
Mhm.
tell you like what color you can get and what model you can get and what year.
Year doesn't matter. They give you a
Okay.
list of the models that are applicable to that rank, and it has to be white.
Has to be white. So they're telling you can go and get a white Lexus, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the paperwork at the dealership is all done in your name, right? You're taking
Yeah.
out that loan on your own. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have to kind of like report back to Plexus and be like, okay, I bought the car. So now I'm opting into this program where you give me a check every month if I continue to meet Emerald requirements, right?
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, it's your car. You now have this Lexus. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to know like what your experience was hitting that rank, realizing that you can get the Lexus, and what that process was like going to the dealership, picking it out, taking it home. Did
Mm-hmm.
you understand the contract before you did that? Were you just like so excited about kind of the status symbol that would bring? I just want to know kind of what your thought process was in general. You
Yeah.
get to have a Lexus now. So what was that like?
Yeah, like I'm going up from a Honda, I had actually just talked to Sam saying, if I hit Emerald in July, I'd really like to get the Lexus. It's a beautiful car. They'll pay me to drive it. So we had talked about selling my car and then I would get the Lexus. Anyway, I hit the rank. To be honest, I don't really remember what was in my head. I remember being surprised, like how the entire responsibility was mine. You go in, you pick out the car, and then you do all the negotiating. It's just like buying a car. You want to
Because
get
it
a
is
certain.
your car.
Yeah.
At this point, like Plexus is not in it at all, really.
Yeah. You kind of negotiate down the monthly cost or whatever. And then Plexus pays you $600 towards your car when you hit that rank each month, each calendar month. So your next paycheck will have that extra $600. Sometimes I look back and I was like, what was I thinking? But I really didn't internalize the responsibility that I had. Well, I was definitely under the impression that Plexus would be a lot more involved.
Mm,
It basically just slapped a bow on top and said, like, you have your Plexus Lexus, but I paid for it.
It's your car. It's not Plexus's car.
It's my car.
It's not the Plexus Lexus. It's Hannah's Lexus. Like you paid for it.
But they sent me a little logo that to put a Plexus on it.
Which is really misleading because they didn't deliver you a Lexus to your house and be like, free car.
Yeah.
So,
And the part of the reason I got it too is I wanted to have an incentive to hold Emerald.
so you thought if I have this car payment looming over my head every month, and that's gonna like kick my butt into gear.
To make sure I hit it. But that's like a pretty expensive incentive.
Mm-hmm.
We negotiated the price or whatever. My payment was $654 a month, and that included a protection program or whatever. Slapped a big bow on top, got some pictures taken with it because it was my Plexus Lexus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't hit Emerald again for 7 months.
Wow.
And
So
this
for
was a
7 months, that car payment falls completely on you.
yeah. I got my Plexus paycheck and I just would take it out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
You didn't get that bonus to go towards it.
yeah, the additional
Oh,
money that would go towards it. So, that was hard on us.
yeah.
That's a pretty expensive car payment.
A
Um,
very expensive car payment. That's a luxury car.
that's a
Like,
luxury car,
like,
exactly.
do you think that like if there wasn't this incentive program in the company that you would have gotten your next car as a Lexus or as something
Or
at
as
a
a
similar
lease.
price point?
Absolutely not. We had my car forever. We owned both of our cars. The lease was not a decision we would have made ever if it wasn't associated with the company I was with.
That's big. That's like
It
a
was
big piece. I can imagine that hitting Emerald and being eligible for this is also like a status symbol in the company. And like you
Mhm.
said, put a bow on top, take an Instagram photo,
Mhm.
and post about it. I'm
Yeah.
sure that's something that was really desirable in the moment of like, look what I have the ability to be able to promote. Look at what this company gave me, and it looks so nice for a photo, but the 650 car payment is not so nice. Like
Totally.
that gives me hives. A $650 car payment is a lot.
Especially coming from owning a car. Like I didn't have to
Right. Yeah. You're going from
pay
like not paying anything anymore to now an extra 650 bill every month.
Yeah, it was significant for sure.
So How many months did Plexus help you out with that car payment in total?
4.
4 months. And you've
Yeah.
had that car for like 2 years now. So 4 months out of the last couple of years.
You know I don't have it anymore, right? Yeah, I told you that.
No. Wait, okay.
Okay, yeah.
I need all
So
the details.
I had the Lexus for 2.5 years. It was just really hard I mean, that's a big payment,
Mhm.
along with a mortgage and just normal living expenses. And I actually had a wealthy family member offer to help me out and was able to buy me out of the lease.
Wow.
I was really sad to get rid of it. I mean, it was an amazing car and it was beautiful, but I just held a lot of resentment and bitterness in that car, just like feeling disappointed, having paid for it for however long, and just feeling like it wasn't truly earned and truly mine, even though I was paying for it and it was a lease and all of that. I just had a lot of built up anger in that car. I didn't feel right driving it anymore because it was associated with Emerald,
Mhm.
because I wasn't holding rank.
Mhm.
So, yeah, the Lexus is gone. It was an amazing car, but Plexus was not involved really in the situation,
I think
unfortunately.
that is so important to talk about over and over again. I will like bring that up so many times that like the free cars are not free. I think that company paid is a term that we see thrown around a lot in reference to the car programs and stuff. And yeah, I guess to an extent that's true. If you
Mhm,
maintain the ranks, then they're going to help you out with the car payment, but they're not just like buying you a car and handing it over.
mhm,
It's, there's a lot of strings attached to it that conveniently are not talked about really when the selling point is I got a company paid car, like they don't mention all the fine print.
mhm.
So I want to take every opportunity to point all that out so that other people don't get themselves in that exact situation that you just outlined.
Yeah.
That's a really tough financial spot to be put in, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, especially if they didn't know fully what the contract was outlining until they found themselves in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, totally. And I will say, like, I don't know, just hold some sense of pride that I have that
Mhm.
we've paid my family member off and the Lexus is done or whatever. And so it's been nice to just kind of get that out of our brains. But
Mhm.
we did have to have help with that
Mhm.
to
Yeah,
be able to get
and
out
I
of the lease.
appreciate you mentioning that because again, it's one of those things where like it happened, it's the truth. That's, the nature of the contract and the compensation plan, and
Mhm,
it sucks and it's a really big bummer, but by you sharing that, I would hope that other people would not find themselves in that same position. So,
mhm,
coming off of the Lexus situation,
uh-huh,
is that sort of like a turning point for you? Is that sort of like leaving a bad taste in your mouth? I guess what I'm really getting at is where was the shift where you started thinking, like, okay, I've been in this company for several years and I've worked my butt off and it's still really freaking hard. So,
yeah.
what was the shift into thinking, like, maybe this is not what I want to continue doing?
I just had been, like, watching your videos.
Oh my
I had been thinking, like, "Okay, I've been in this for 5 years at that time. Not one person or maybe one person has gotten to the place of where I want to be in that amount of time."
Mhm.
So I was just like, "Is it even possible?" Because I know a lot of people that are working really hard to get to the place where these certain leaders were. That was just like super significant amount of money. Success that I wanted, that was the goal, was just this huge salary basically. And as I looked back, I was just like, only one person has gotten to that point since I started. And
That kind of speaks to the fact that like the time you spend in it or the amount of work you do is not, again, really correlated
mhm.
to your rank or your income.
To be honest, it sounds like it's luck.
Bingo.
And I just, like, made that
Yep.
like, it's luck, it's if you get someone that's super influential in your team, that's awesome, and you're gonna shoot to the top
Yes, ma'am.
at some point, maybe. It's freaking luck.
It's freaking luck. It really is because again, it's something that's not in your control, right?
Yeah. You can only do so
you can
much.
only do so much. And at some point, I feel like luck and timing has a lot to do
Mhm.
with it. Who do you have on your team? How big of a following do they have? How much influence do they have? How many people can they get on our team too? And therefore boost me, you know?
Totally. And another turning point was thinking about new people in my life and friends as ways to get to this goal. That sounds really harsh. And I don't mean it that
I know
hard.
exactly what you're saying. Yes.
If I met someone new at the store, in the back of my mind, it's like, my gosh, they would get me to Diamond, right? And you start to get to a point where you look at your friendships differently. And this was a huge point I wanted to tell you too, is the sister that I recruited with me, we were in a weird spot because
Mm,
of Plexus, because of the business, because of different people we recruited, because just weird hardships. Doing business with family, right, is
yeah.
can be really hard, and it got us to a really weird point to where we weren't even really talking.
Oh,
That was a huge turning point too. It's like, that's my sister,
yeah.
and
And
she's one of my best friends.
but the dynamic of the business is sort of like interfering with that.
And I didn't want that to be part of our relationship anymore.
Mhm.
And it wasn't serving our relationship at all, and it was really driving a wedge between us.
Mhm.
And that was heartbreaking. And when I was so deep in it, and it was just like, it's fine, we'll figure it out. Like, we just hustle and we'll just figure it out. And when we're Diamond, everything will be fine, right? But
Mm,
that just isn't how it works.
yeah.
And family and relationships are so important. And it wasn't worth that to me anymore. It wasn't worth the sacrificing of relationships with my sister. It wasn't worth having the thought of business builders in the back of my head in friendships. It just wasn't worth that. I just didn't feel like I was living like my genuine self anymore.
Mhm.
There was always this thing in the back of my brain, this, what's it called? Ulterior motive. Is that
Mhm. Ulterior motive. Yeah, like you're not looking at a friendship as just a friendship. There's like a
Yeah.
friendship plus earning potential.
And Hannah, like me, wants to cry thinking about that because I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm a genuine person. I love my friends. I love genuine relationships, but to feel stuck in that and trapped in having to think that way and being in it so long that my brain was just programmed to
Mhm.
automatically think that way,
Yeah,
that just wasn't who I am. And it
exactly.
makes me want to cringe. It makes me itchy to think about
Mhm.
it now. Because now I can just have friends to be friends and to know people and
How
to
freeing. Yeah.
until I have to go message them on Facebook and I see an old cold message and I want to crawl into my skin. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's just that's what it came down to, was wondering what I actually wanted to do with my life and deciding for myself that that wasn't the only way to have a lucrative lifestyle.
Mhm.
Because I kind of was like, okay, this is the bet I made. I got to lay in it. Like, this is the only way I'm going to figure it out and be able to make $400,000 a year or whatever. This is the only way. And
Mhm.
so we got to make it work. But that's not true.
Mhm. What that's called is like the sunk cost fallacy of like I've put in so many years, so much
Mhm.
effort, so much passion and drive
Yeah.
into this to walk away. I have too much invested to walk away.
Hmm.
And that's a really hard thing to overcome
Yeah.
because I think that's like a valid way of thinking is like, well, I'm already here. I've already committed to it, so we might as well stick with it.
Hmm.
And that's really difficult to be able to take a step back and realize there are other options
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah. Totally. I think one thing I wanted to make sure I said was I love the people I got to meet in the community, and I made such great friends and still friends with them. I mean, it's hard when you don't have that commonality anymore, right? You're not
Right.
seeing them on Zoom calls every week and you're not visiting them at convention, and so it's hard to like kind of maintain that friendship. But like, I just don't have a single bad thing to say about anybody. I just love the friendships I've made in that, and I feel like that's one of the only positive things that came from doing this. And
Mhm.
I just have decided like I need to just hold my head up high and just do what's best for me and live a genuine to myself. And that's how I'm going to be so much happier. And since making that decision, I just like found out so much about MLM and how much of a black hole basically it can be.
And it's hard to see that you're in the black hole when you're in the black hole.
Yeah, because it's freaking dark in there, man. Freaking dark in there. All you see is like Plexus lights and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you can see a lot more about the situation once you're like one step removed from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been really fascinating to see your transition into that, because we've had a few like text message exchanges and stuff like that where I'll say something and you'll be like, "Oh, yeah. I didn't think about it that way." And it just kind of, I don't know, it opens you up to thinking about the whole situation in a new light once you're looking at it, I guess, from the
Yeah,
outside looking in kind of thing.
totally.
So I do have just a couple more, like we can do like a couple more rapid fire questions. The one
Yeah.
thing I do want to know is, knowing what you know now about MLMs, about Plexus, about the compensation plan and how it's designed to work, would you go back and change it? Would you go back and decide that you did not want to be involved? Or are you happy that you did join Plexus and have these experiences and learn from them?
Both, if I can choose both.
Yeah.
I think that on one hand, love the friendships I've made. I feel really great on the products that I take. I did it from I was 21 to 28. Like that's just a lot of learning time. And I think that self-development to a point is really great for, I mean, just life in general, obviously, to a point where it's not obsessive and pressure and like crazy.
Mhm.
And I did a lot of growing. I did a lot of like confidence building. And I think those are things I'll use for the rest of my life. And I'm grateful for that. But the reality is, there are points that I wish that I hadn't gotten involved. I did lose money, I'm sure.
Well, if you're willing to just, I guess, give like a guesstimate, do you think over your 6 years that you did spend more than you made?
Yes.
Wow.
Especially when it got up to the higher ranks and I wasn't hitting my points.
Hmm.
I would buy orders. The Lexus really has a huge pull on that. The lowest I ever made, I don't know if you're interested in this.
Yes, if you're willing to share. I'm all about like the hard facts. Like give me the
Yeah.
numbers if you're
So
comfortable.
the first month, I think I made 150-ish. And that was with going silver. That was my first rank. But because I progressed pretty fast, I wouldn't be able to tell you what, like, if I was still silver, what I would have continued to
Mm-hmm.
make. I don't know, because I clearly did not do a ton of research. But silver, I made around 150 that month. Gold, it was like 600 to 700. That includes the bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Senior gold, I probably made $800 to $1,000 a month. Ruby, I consistently made like 1,500 a month. Senior ruby, probably like 18-ish. And then the months that I hit emerald is about 6.
6,000 a month.
Yes, but I only held that 4 times.
That's a big jump from senior ruby to emerald. Like, would you say 1,800 to like 6,000?
Yeah, it was, sorry, I think it was like 5,800.
Well,
But
no, I believe your numbers. I'm just saying it seemed like it would step up incrementally, and then there's like this huge jump once you get to emerald. That's kind of interesting.
the emerald, the top, so the top 3 ranks, you part of the compensation plan is you're in a pool. So like
Ah,
sharing. So when you're emerald and you're hitting the emerald rank, you get part of that emerald pool, and so that
hmm,
that jumps in there. But
yeah. You believe that like if you were to really crunch all the numbers, what you spent versus what you made, you think you would be at a loss?
yeah, I think so.
Wow.
With all the product I bought, I
Hmm.
wish I had all the right, like the specific numbers, but with all the product I bought, the Lexus, the trips,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure I did. And that's hard to look at because you're just like, I don't know, living on a dream, like, pushing through, but
Well, and again, all the time and effort and hard work that I know you put in. You can see it. You're a hard worker. And I feel like when you care about something, you give it your all. You really throw yourself into that thing. And I could see it from the outside. This is something you're really passionate about and you're working really, really hard at. And
mhm,
then to do that for years on end, and then
mhm.
at the end of it have to look back and be like, I actually probably didn't make any money. That sucks. And there's no good way to sugarcoat it, but I
Yeah.
think that that is such an important thing to talk about and to say that you gave it your all. You were like the picture perfect poster child of like what someone in an MLM should do. You did everything the right way, did you not? Like you really gave it your all.
I really
And
tried.
you did. You did. You did everything the correct way by MLM standards, and it still didn't work out. And so, what does that say? Not about you, but about the business model. It
But
was not designed for you to succeed.
yeah, it's just hard to like sum it up, how
Mhm.
like all the feelings and emotions about it. And
That's a lot to process that I'm sure will take a lot of time to work through.
yeah, there's a lot of toxicity. What's it called though? Where there's so much pressure,
Like toxic positivity.
toxic positivity. It's like everything's fine, good vibes, like good vibes only, positive only, which I feel like really downplays your feelings and emotions. And
It almost feels like you're not given the space to complain about things or to like bring up things that aren't going well because that's not positive. That's not what we should be focusing on. And
yeah.
not much acknowledgement of when things really aren't going well. And it's okay if things aren't going well. It's okay to sit with that. I don't think we should always be pushing to pretend that everything's fine all the time when it's not. I don't think that's healthy personally. So,
I feel like being part of an MLM, being part of Plexus, it also really filtered what I put out online. Like the supplements helped me a ton, but like I had bad days, but bad days don't portray that everything's great, right?
mhm,
And that they should go on the products. So
mhm,
I just felt like I really couldn't be genuine in what I put out. I felt like I couldn't be me and still be successful.
mhm.
Like if I had a bad crappy day and my stomach just like killed, it's like you can't share that.
Right, because that reflects on the products that you're supposed to be
Yeah. And
selling and promoting.
though they do and did help me a ton, it doesn't matter if you have a bad day.
Mhm,
I just couldn't genuinely be me anymore. And like talking to my sister, we just laugh about it now because we just like feel free to do what I want to do and
mhm,
not pressured to do anything, to sell something and to act a certain way and to be a certain way and to be successful and to look like I'm an emerald and have a car and
mhm.
just want to like just make bread.
Me too, girl. Me too.
I want to
So
make bread and walk my dogs. That's all I want.
exactly. So, I mean, that kind of leads me right into the final question is, what are you up to now? What does your life look like today now that Plexus is not really a part of it anymore?
I kind of dove back into photography work and been taking on more clients in that,
Mhm,
making sure I'm focusing on things that I enjoy doing. Like you said, when I'm really passionate about something, I put my all into it. And so I have into a lot of like dog rescue work and volunteering with shelters and doing their photos and stuff. And that's really given me a lot of purpose since stopping Plexus because I went through a phase of like, I'm free, but like, what do I do?
mhm. It's daunting to have all the options.
Yeah, in a
Where do I go?
weirdest way.
Mhm,
It's been weird. Like I've been doing photography, but I'm so used to being home and doing things on my own schedule
mhm,
that it's been kind of difficult to think about going and getting a different job. And I told you this in a text, I think, like Plexus took a huge chunk of my 20s
Mhm.
And the majority in 6 years, I could have went and got a master's. So here I am fresh out of an MLM, and I could have been getting a master's degree, or I could have been kind of pouring that time into developing other skills or schooling, or even just furthering my photography business, which I love. It was a very hopeless feeling to come out of that and be like, all this time
Mm.
I could have been doing something that I feel like would actually benefit my life more than Plexus has and will.
Mhm.
And that sucks. That
Yeah,
totally
it does. And it's fine to say that. It does suck. Does it feel like you've kind of been almost set back a little bit?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if that's what I've been doing, and that was my decision, was to only focus on Plexus, because when I
Mhm.
go all in, I'm all in, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, thinking about going and getting a job, it's like, what do you throw on a resume?
Mhm.
That I was in an MLM for 6 years. You know, like there's been a few different challenges that I wasn't expecting, and photography is going great. And I don't necessarily need to go get another job, but for the social part of it, it's really fun for me to be around people. And,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just been interesting because it's like, oh,
Mm.
MLM, Plexus, you
Yeah.
know,
Where do we go from here,
like,
Knowing you and knowing just like how passionate you are and how kind and loving and intelligent and warm. And basically, what I'm saying is like the world is your oyster. You're going to be great at whatever you choose to do. And I know that that decision is a daunting one, and you might not have that answer right now, but I feel confident that whatever Hannah chooses to do in the future, she's going to be incredible at it. I mean that.
thank you.
I have one last burning question.
Okay, yeah.
Were you ever upset with me for my videos?
Trying to think.
Did
Probably.
did they ever rub you the wrong way? Did you ever watch the Plexus deep dive I
Oh,
did?
of course I did.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the Plexus deep
I
dive?
haven't watched it forever.
That was a long time ago. That was over a year ago at this point, but
Were you so nervous to post that?
yes, there's a reason that I waited so long. Like, that was the first company I ever really looked into or knew
Yeah.
about, but I waited intentionally a long, long time because I was nervous because, again, I didn't want it to come across as, like, an attack on you or something.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't sure if you were gonna watch it or not, and I wanted to make sure that if you did, A, I had my facts straight,
Mm,
and B, that I presented it in a way that was respectful. So, did you get that vibe? Like, what was your reaction to it?
I'd have to look
Upset
at
by it?
No. No, I've never been upset at a video you did. I think that when you're in that mindset, it's just kind of like, oh, she's saying I'm wrong, when really it's the company, right?
Mhm.
But no, I was never upset about anything.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
I think I watched them more than you probably think.
Really?
Yeah. But no, I was never upset. I thought some were interesting. It was definitely a factor in deciding to leave, because I'm like, these are all really great points. And
Yes.
yeah. Um,
That's the goal. Yay.
I don't remember how what I specifically remember about the Plexus deep dive, because it was so long ago. Uh,
Yeah, that's fair. I don't really even remember it. Like, I'd have to go back and watch it again because
yeah, but I totally watched it. I just felt like it was a constant, like, walking on eggshells, like, not you, like me. I have to do a lot of brain tweaking, because I would watch it and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I probably shouldn't be watching this.
Oh, interesting.
Like, we didn't really dive much into like the brain, like,
Brainwashing, cult mentality. We can say it. It's fine. Like,
yeah, gosh,
it just is
yeah,
what
like
it is.
cult mentality.
Because I'm sure that that kind of video was not encouraged, obviously. Like, I'm sure that
It wasn't positive. It wasn't going to get you to your next rank, right? I remember thinking like, oh, probably shouldn't be watching this.
my interpretation of you saying that is that's an information control kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you were probably told what kinds of resources would be productive for your business and what kinds of things would not be productive. And that's a way of you know, the
And so now I just
business,
think of it the same way.
right, like the business, the uplines trying to control what kind of information you get. And that's a way that they keep you in, you know?
Yeah.
Because like you said, if you watch something where you do see valid points that make you reevaluate things or question
Mhm.
things, that's ultimately not good for
Yeah.
the business, for the uplines if you decide to leave, that kind of thing. So I can see why it would probably feel like it was like naughty or like off limits or like I shouldn't be watching this. Like that makes sense. It
Yeah.
does.
I think Plexus will always have a little spot in my heart where looking back, not everything was horrible, but also looking forward, there are so many things that I'm leaving behind that I don't want to be a part of. And that's okay. It sucks and it's okay.
It sucks and it's okay.
And I think Plexus will, like, if you make another Plexus video, I'll totally watch it, but I think there will always be a, not, I hate to say brainwashed. There will always be a little part of me that's like, no, Plexus and my little itty bitty treasure chest.
Yes. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, because that's a way that you've been kind of conditioned all these years is to like hold the company and its reputation to a certain standard, right? And you want to protect that. I understand that.
And I guess I put all the positivity that I had in there.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, the people, I do feel good on the products. Ultimately, it's not worth myself. But I love watching your videos about all the other companies because I don't give a crap about them. Like, I don't have any treasure chests for them. So,
No treasure chests about them. Oh
no,
my gosh. Well,
no baby
I think
treasure.
that's a great place to kind of leave us off on that you can have this little treasure chest of all the positive experiences that you had from Plexus, and you can take that with you, and that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm just so happy to see you moving forward and whatever that means for you, whatever you're going forward to do in your life. I think that, like I said, the world is your oyster. You know, like you can do
Cute.
whatever you want to do and you're going to be great at it. And I really commend you for even having this conversation and for talking with me and hanging out and like filling me in on all of the Plexus details that I've been dying to ask you all these years. Because now it
Great.
kind of feels like that line of communication is open now. And I'm so
Mhm.
grateful for that with us and our friendship. So
Yeah.
well, thank you
Thanks for
so much.
having me.
I love you, Ham.
I love you too.
Thanks for being here. So there you have it, my friends. I'm so grateful that Hannah took time to have this really hard conversation with me and to really open up about everything that happened to her in her MLM. I cannot commend her vulnerability enough. A lot of these topics are extremely difficult to talk about. And I hope that as you listen to her story, you can recognize that hers is not an isolated experience. A lot of the experiences that she's reporting have happened to so many people across a variety of different MLM companies. And I appreciate Hannah's bravery and her willingness to speak up about what happened. I can't reiterate enough that Hannah is kind, she is compassionate, she is intelligent, she's loving and caring and honest, and she's a good human. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that anyone can find themselves in an MLM. And the vast majority of people who get involved are not bad people, and they are deserving of so much more than their MLM can offer them. There is a whole world of opportunities out there where you don't have to be recruiting people and you don't have to be working yourself into the ground and stressing yourself out and burning yourself out, all in the name of pursuing the nearly impossible task of climbing the ranks in an MLM company. So on that note, I want to say thank you again to Hannah for being here with me today. Thank you to the viewers for the kindness and the respect that I know you're going to show Hannah in the comments. That's everything I have for you for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.